guys, we're talking again about 2D figures. So here's our activating strategy for the day. Go ahead and pause me, and then I will explain a couple of different ways that we could classify quadrilaterals. Okay, so looking at our hierarchy, we can see that we could actually pull out trapezoid and say that trapezoid doesn't belong. Well, for one reason is it is the only one of those four shapes that is not a parallelogram. So it does not have two sets of parallel sides, okay? All right, so let's move on to the next. Our learning target is I can classify two-dimensional figures in a hierarchy based on properties. For example, polygons, triangles, and quadrilaterals. Our learning focus is students will classify two-dimensional figures in a hierarchy based on properties. So quadrilaterals can be classified on their attributes. On the next slide, there are examples of quadrilateral hierarchy. So I actually pulled out one of the examples because I wanted to just kind of go over our hierarchy, and then I have another example that I'll show you. Okay, so the first one we start with is a polygon, and a polygon just has to be a closed figure with at least 3 sides and 3 angles. And specifically, again, we're looking at quadrilaterals. So we're going to start with quadrilaterals. So a quadrilateral is a 4-sided polygon with 4 sides and 4 angles. Okay, so another example of a quadrilateral is a kite. And a kite has 2 congruent adjacent sides. So as long as the sides that are touching side to side here are congruent and these 2 are congruent, then it is a kite. Okay? Now, a kite is not a trapezoid because it does not have one set of parallel sides. Matter of fact, if its sides were to continue going, it would run into each other. Okay? So, it is not a trapezoid. It is not a parallelogram. Okay? All right, so a trapezoid is a quadrilateral, and it has at least one set of parallel sides. Okay? Right under trapezoid is a parallelogram. So, a parallelogram has 2 sets of parallel sides. Now, I want you to remember, if I'm going up, it is always that. But if I'm going down, it has to meet a certain criteria or a certain type of definition, okay? So a quadrilateral is not always a kite, but it can be a kite if it has 2 congruent adjacent angles. A quadrilateral is not always a trapezoid. Sometimes it's a kite, sometimes it's a trapezoid. It has to meet the qualifications for a trapezoid, which means at least one set of parallel sides, okay? All right, so a parallelogram has 2 sets. So types of parallelograms would be a rhombus, a square, and a rectangle, okay? So a parallelogram that has 4 congruent sides or 4 equal sides is called a rhombus. A parallelogram that has 4 right angles is called a rectangle. A parallelogram that has 4 right angles and 4 equal or congruent sides is called a square. So all of these are parallelograms, okay? So a square is always a rectangle. A rectangle is always a parallelogram. A square is always a rhombus. A rhombus is always a parallelogram. A rhombus is not a square. A rectangle is not a square, okay? Because it does not meet the qualifications. It is not, yes, it has 4 right angles, but it does not have 4 equal sides. Yes, a rhombus has 4 equal sides, but it does not have 4 right angles. And to be a square, you have to have both, okay? So here's another hierarchy that I wanted to show you. So if you look at this one's just more of a simple one. It does not include a kite, but it's just a better way and maybe an easier way of seeing how the hierarchy works, okay? To be a quadrilateral, you have to have 4 sides, 4 angles, 4 vertices. Vertices are the points at which the angles meet, and 2 diagonals. So that means that it has to go one way and then the other one has to go another way, okay? All right, so So when we look at a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with at least one set of opposite parallel sides. There are 3 types of trapezoids. You do not need to know about that. That's a little bit more in depth, but yes, there is a right isosceles and a scalene, just like triangles. Why is that? Because a quadrilateral is literally 2 triangles put together. Every single quadrilateral is literally 2 triangles put together, okay? So a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with opposite sides that are parallel, opposite sides that are congruent, and opposite angles that are also congruent, okay? So if I were to look at this angle and this angle, they would be the exact same measure, and this angle and this angle would be the exact same measure, okay? A rhombus is a quadrilateral with, sorry, I can't see that, a quadrilateral with 4 congruent sides, opposite sides that are parallel, and opposite angles that are congruent. A rectangle is a quadrilateral with 4 right angles, opposite sides are parallel, and opposite sides are congruent. So basically when I say opposite sides are parallel and opposite sides are congruent, I'm calling them parallelograms because that is the definition of a parallelogram. And a square has 4 right angles, 4 congruent sides, and it's a parallelogram, okay? So now that we see the 2 different types of hierarchies, one thing that I want you to remember as we complete these exercises today is when I go up in my hierarchy, it always applies. The rule is, it is exactly what is above it, okay? Going down, not necessarily unless it meets the criteria, okay? So going down, a quadrilateral can be a trapezoid if it has at least one set of parallel sides, okay? A trapezoid is not a parallelogram because it does not meet that qualification of having 2 sets of parallel sides. So let's go ahead. We're going to get started with our exercise today. So I have this paper here. And up at the top, it has some rules, and you will have one that you're going to work on today. This is not the one. This is just an example. But I do want you to remember the rule that a trapezoid has at least one set of parallel sides, okay? On this thing, it just says has only one pair of parallel sides. I want you to remember at least one. Okay, so this one has some letters. It has Q for quadrilateral, K for kite, T for trapezoid, P for parallelogram, H for rhombus, R for rectangle. H is because the rhombus is RH, and rectangle and rhombus both start with a R. R for rectangle, and S for square. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at each one of these quadrilaterals and you're going to classify them, okay? So this one we're going to work out together. You're going to click on the link below this video to get the attachment for your practice today. You do not need to post it anywhere. You do not need to take pictures of it. You're just going to show it to your parent to prove that you completed it, okay? So let's look at the first one. If we look, we can see that this side and this side are the same length. But because there are 2 tick marks here and 2 tick marks there, that means that these are not the exact same length as this one. So while it might look a little bit like a square, it's actually not, okay? It has 2 sides that are congruent and 2 sides there. So this is actually, let's see, and then it's got an angle here and an angle there. So this is a quadrilateral. So I'm going to just classify it as a quadrilateral. It has 2 sets of parallel sides, so it is also a parallelogram. But I don't see anything else. I do not see right angles. This is not a 90-degree angle. And all 4 sides are not congruent. It does have at least one set of parallel sides, so it is also a trapezoid. So for the very first one, it is a quadrilateral, it is a parallelogram, and it is a trapezoid. Okay? All right, let's look at number 2. For number 2, it is very similar to number 1. Okay? It has looks like congruent. It has 4 sides, so it's a quadrilateral. We'll start with that. Okay. It has 2 sides that are parallel, so it is a parallelogram. It has at least 1 set of parallel sides, so it is a trapezoid. And it does not appear to have any sides that are the same, so it is exactly like number 1. All right, let's look at number 3. Number 3 seems to have only 1 set of parallel sides. Actually, it doesn't even, that's kind of sloping downward. That's sloping downward. So this just appears to just be a quadrilateral. Okay, it has no sets of parallel sides. It does not have congruent adjacent angles. It definitely does not have 2 sets of parallel sides, so it is just a quadrilateral. For number 4, I see 4 right angles right away. So first I know it's a quadrilateral. It has 4 sides. I see that it has 4 right angles. It is a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides. It's a rectangle. And I also can see that it has 4 congruent sides because it has the same amount of tick marks. So it is a square. It is also a trapezoid because it has at least 1 set of parallel sides. So I see a quadrilateral, trapezoid, a parallelogram, a rectangle because it has 4 right angles, and a square because it has 4 equal sides along with the 4 right angles. Okay? All right, let's look at number 5. I noticed that it has 2 tick marks here, which lets me know that these sides are slightly different from this side. So because of that, I see that it is a quadrilateral. It is a trapezoid because it has at least 1 set of parallel sides. It has, it's a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides. It is also a rectangle because it has 4 right angles. Based off of the tick marks, with this one having 2 on this side and 1 on that side, that means that these sides are congruent, but these sides are different, but they are congruent to each other. So that makes it a rectangle. It is not a square. So it is a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. It is a trapezoid because it has at least 1 set of parallel sides. It is a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides. And it is a rectangle because it has 4 right angles. All right, let's look at number 6. Number 6, I can see 2 sides that are right angles, but what I notice is it's a quadrilateral first, and I can also see that this does actually have 1 set of parallel sides here. So it has 1 set of parallel sides, so it is also a trapezoid, but it is not a parallelogram. Okay? All right, let's look at number 7. Number 7, it has just 1 set of parallel sides. So it is a quadrilateral. It is not a parallelogram, but it is a trapezoid. And that just changed my thinking about number 2. I just noticed that number 2 doesn't have any tick marks, so I'm going to get rid of parallelogram for number 2 because it is just a quadrilateral and a trapezoid, just like number 7. Okay. All right, number 8. I can see that these 2 sides are congruent and they're adjacent. They're right next to each other. So it is a quadrilateral because it has 4 equal sides. Well, not 4 equal sides, but 4 sides and 4 angles. It is a kite because it has adjacent congruent angles. And that is all. All right, I'm looking at number 9, and I can see that it has adjacent congruent angles. So it is also a quadrilateral and a kite. Okay. All right, so you are going to do the exact same thing today with the other paper that looks just like this that is attached to the video. We will go over it together tomorrow in the next video. If you have any questions, please make sure you use Padlet. Have a good day today.